Hello students. In this video, I'm going to show you how you would use a refutation paragraph in the context of your opinion essay. In our class, you wrote a refutation paragraph by itself, but for the final essay, it's going to be important to use such a refutation paragraph inside your essay, as part of your essay. Consider this essay question. You can pause the video to read this question. If you have to write an essay on this question, you're going to take one of two positions. You're either going to argue that yes, it's morally acceptable to lie in this case, or no, it's not morally acceptable. I know some of you feel one way and some of you feel the other way, and that's totally fine. You could argue for either side. Whichever side you argue for, as part of this essay, it would be a great idea to consider the point of view of the people you're arguing against. And that's the idea with the refutation paragraph. Now, how would we structure the whole essay? Well, this should look very familiar to you. There's going to be an introduction. There are going to be body paragraphs, at least 2 body paragraphs, maybe more, and a conclusion. What would your thesis statement look like? Your thesis statement is obviously going to be either it is morally acceptable or it is not morally acceptable. You could write a slightly different thesis statement, but in my case, I'll say it is not morally acceptable for the doctor to lie in this case. We could ask, what should you do in the introduction? The answer to that question is the same thing as for any other opinion essay. You need to give the audience enough background to understand your thesis statement and care about it. So you may want to discuss lying in general. How often do we lie? Why do people lie in general? What's the purpose of it? Some people think it's okay. Some people think it's not okay, depending on, I don't know, the intentions. Or maybe you want to just explain this particular case in as much detail as you can, presenting the alternatives, either lying or telling the truth, so that you can see, your reader can see that there are 2 choices here. The body, as is always the case, is where you make the argument in favor of your position. Here, I'll use body number 1 to give an argument, to give reasoning for my position, just like any other essay. Maybe I'm going to do this in 1 body paragraph, maybe I'm going to use 2 or 3 body paragraphs. In my case, what I'm going to say is lying doesn't give the woman the information she needs to make informed decisions about her future. Many of you said this in the discussion, so I decided to use this. Telling the truth allows her to make good decisions based on information. Just like any time I'm arguing something, I need to explain what I mean, and I need to argue for it. I need to give you a reason or many reasons. I need to provide evidence. I need to give an example. I need to persuade you that this is the right position. Body 2, in this case, is where I'm going to use my refutation paragraph. And again, it could be body 2 or body 3, or it could be both, so on. Here, I'm going to consider the opposing view, which is, in this case, it may be argued that by lying, the doctor reduces her suffering, which is morally good. Some of you thought this, that if the doctor lies, she will suffer less. That's morally acceptable. That's a good thing. We should do it. So I'm going to consider that in my body 2. In the first half of this body 2, I'm going to explain that point of view. Why is it that the lying reduces her suffering? Why is it that reducing suffering is good? Maybe reducing suffering is the goal of all of our decisions. Maybe that's what the doctor's job is, to reduce suffering. If that's the case, then surely lying, many people would argue, is the right thing to do in this case. So I'm going to take 5 to 6 sentences to explain this. If we'd done some reading on this case with people arguing for it, you might want to quote somebody that you disagree with. You might want to paraphrase their ideas and cite a source. Then in the second half of this paragraph, I'm going to explain what's wrong with this point of view. This is the important thing here. So listen, you don't want to just repeat what you said earlier. The point is not for me to argue from my point of view here. The point is for me to explain why this point of view is wrong. So it's slightly different. I want to refute this point of view by saying where it goes wrong, what mistake it makes. In this case, I have a couple choices, I think. I could say, actually, the lying doesn't reduce suffering. It looks like it reduces suffering, but it doesn't. Maybe it just delays the suffering. Maybe she's going to suffer more later when she finds out the truth. Or maybe I'm going to say, the point is not to reduce suffering. That's a bad goal to have. Maybe that's not the doctor's job. Maybe suffering is a good thing in the context of human experience. Possibly you want to argue both of these things. But that's a lot, actually. I might just want to focus on one response, one refutation, and explain it as well as I can. And if I'm successful, I'm going to convince the reader that this position, this opposing position, is not correct. That's my goal in my refutation paragraph. In the context of an essay, I might have one refutation paragraph. I might have 2 refutation paragraphs. It just depends on what I'm trying to do, what my topic is. The conclusion is going to be like any other essay. You're going to restate your main ideas, and the main ideas are those that you've argued for in the 2 body paragraphs. Try to do that in 1 or 2 sentences, and you're going to add an additional thought. I have a couple ideas for my additional thought, but really you have many choices about where you could go. As always, the additional thought is not additional arguments for your point of view. You're assuming at this point that the reader agrees with you, that you've been successful in persuading the reader, and now you're adding something else, something next to think about. So here are 2 ideas, quick ideas. Maybe this conclusion can be generalized to other cases. Maybe we can make a more general principle about lying. Maybe lying is never right because it always takes away the ability to make a decision. Maybe. Or here's a totally different direction. Why is it that doctors lie in this way? Is this a common thing? Maybe in certain cultures, maybe in my culture, this is common. Maybe they need to be educated differently at medical school. So maybe I'll make some recommendations based on my analysis of this case. Okay, now I'm going to summarize very quickly. This is an essay. It's just a normal opinion essay. The only thing new that we're working on here is part of arguing from my point of view is going to be considering an opposing point of view and refuting it. That can be an effective part of an opinion essay.